'Cause I gotta pay a bill. They're sending me bills now. That ain't right.
Oh, we're safe letter.
Okay, I'll fill it out.
There's nothing to fill out really.
Oh,
We're just getting there.
It's just a survey on how you feel lately.
okay. Build another pipeline. Yeah. Well, Seth's there, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. Calling the June 13th, 2023 Wood Village City Council meeting to order. And do I have a council member who'd like to read our land acknowledgement statement? Thank you, Councilor.
The Chinooka people known as the Clackamas and Cascade are indigenous people of the land now inhabited by the city of Wood Village and other areas of the Columbia River. The village of Nechoclí was located near the Blue Lake Park. Ancestral life of these people included a seasonal round of resource gatherers and stewardship from the Wapato fields and fishing areas of the Columbia River to the cedars and the huckleberry gathering areas of the High Cascades. Introduced disease from earlier settlers dramatically reduced the number of these people. They signed the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855 with the United States government and were forcibly removed to the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation. We thank the descendants of these tribes of being the original stewards of and protectors of these lands since time immemorial. We also acknowledge the systemic policy and genocide, relocation and assimilation that still impacts many indigenous Native American families today. We are honored by their collective work of many Native nations, leaders and families who are demonstrating resilience, resistance, revitalization, healing, and creativity. We are honored to be guests upon these lands.
Thank you. And please raise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Well, following that land acknowledgement statement, and many of you may have been following this story in the papers, but longtime matriarch of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde passed she passed on May 21st. And council on at your seats include the memorial program and a tribute that with the help of various newspapers and columns is a tribute, and I'm going to read that tribute into our record. We all know that the Grand Ronde tribe is a very important partner to us in Wood Village. We are continuing to work with them, and they will be partners with us for a long time. So I think it's fitting that we recognize this important person in that tribe. You can follow along with me. When I finish from the tribute, I have a few maybe more anecdotal notes from the memorial service that I picked up, as well as in the newspapers. And then if you've been following this story, then I want to, at the end here, just allow council to make any comments or any kinds of perspectives that you have. Catherine Harrison, who ushered in tribal recognition and cultural reparations and financial independence for the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, died May 21st, 2023. Mixing humor and courage, Harrison rose to the claim, later in life after experiencing firsthand the systemic abuse of Indigenous peoples. Harrison made her foray into the Indigenous civil rights movement at the age of 50 when she began working with the Siletz Tribal Alcohol Program as a nurse. A year later, in 1975, Harrison won election to the Siletz Tribal Council and began fighting for the 61 tribes in Oregon that lost federal recognition under the Western Oregon Indian Termination Act of 1954. In 1976, Harrison testified in front of Congress to regain tribal recognition for the Siletz tribe. Lawmakers passed the Siletz Restoration Act in 1977, and a few years later, after that, Harrison reconnected with the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, where her father had been an enrolled member. She was elected to its tribal council in 1982. Alongside her son and daughter, Harrison testified in front of Congress again in 1983, this time on behalf of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. Harrison again succeeded. Congress enacted the Grand Ronde Restoration Act in 1983, paving the way for the reestablishment of the Grand Ronde Reservation and the creation of the Spirit Mountain Casino. During her time on the tribal council, she helped guide the tribe into gaming through the signing of a compact with then Oregon Governor Barbara Roberts in 1993. She also suggested the tribe start endowment funds to benefit education, healthcare, economic development, and social and cultural programs. Spirit Mountain opened its doors in 1995 and ushered in an era of economic growth for the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. With newfound financial independence, the tribe with Harrison helped establish the Spirit Mountain Community Fund, a charitable organization that has distributed more than $94 million to nonprofits around Oregon. Some honors and recognition include, among others, the prestigious Tom McCall Award, created to recognize outstanding contributions from individuals who mirror the spirit and service shown by the former governor in 2001. Her name was inscribed on the Wall of Honor at the National Museum of American Indian at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. in 2001. The first Native American recipient of the Oregon History Maker Honor in 2012, given out by the Oregon Historical Society. These awards recognize individuals who represent the best of what Oregon has to offer. She was a recipient of the Betty Roberts Women in Leadership Award in 2012 from the Emerge Oregon of Portland-based training program for Democratic women. She received honorary degrees from Portland State University in 2003, the University of Portland in May of 2013, and Willamette University in Salem in 2014. She became the first Native American to serve on the board of directors at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City in 2018. And most recently, Corvallis School District renamed one of its elementary schools, the Catherine Harrison Elementary School, in May of 2022. So that's the tribute, but let me give you a little more background. If you've read some of the stories, this woman was an amazing individual, not only in what she accomplished here, but here's a little background on her life. She was born in 1924. 1924, if we can put it in perspective, was 4 years after the 19th Amendment was passed that gave women the right to vote. She was orphaned at age 10 and sent to foster care. She experienced sexual abuse in that foster care and ran away. She was sent then to the Chemawa Indian boarding school in Salem. Now, if you've been following some of the stories about Indian boarding schools in the United States, they were not pleasant places. Military style rigor, and with a primary motive is to strip the indigenous people of their identity and culture. She stayed in that school, but even with that kind of environment, what she said, her quote, and on your memorial program, that's a picture of a book called Standing Tall. And the author was at her service. And one of the quotes often said is, in her words, "For once I belonged." So she went to a tough place, but for her, she belonged. She graduated from Chemawa Indian School in Salem in 1943. 1943 was the height of World War II. I put these dates in here on purpose because that's when this woman was struggling to find her way, but finding her way in a society that was not only somewhat hostile to minorities and indigenous people, but often to females and limiting females' access to leadership roles. Well, she graduated in 1943. In 1970, at age 46, she left an alcoholic and abusive husband with 5 children and moved back to Oregon, enrolled in Lane Community College, and earned an associate's degree in nursing. At age 50, she began her work with the Siletz tribe, as I mentioned, in a tribal alcoholic program. So the picture of this individual, as I followed the story and just looked at it, not only that we have a close relationship with the Confederated Tribes, but just what this individual accomplished in the state of Oregon. I think the best quote from former Governor Ted Kulongoski: "Catherine's leadership brought respect and dignity to the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde and all of Oregon's native people. She made Oregon a better place for all of us." So then I cited the sources. Those weren't all my words. I copied and pasted. So anyway, if I can, I'll stop here and for council to follow up with any of the information you already know about this story or any thoughts.
Thank you, Mayor. That was just a really great tribute to her. I don't know much about this individual, but what stood out as soon as I opened the program was her quote, "Lord, help me do and say what will help my people today." Sounds to me like a morning prayer. And I feel like based on what you said, she spent her whole life in service to her community. And if that's what people say about us when we leave the earth, or, whatever happens after we go, I think that's a pretty amazing thing. So.
Thank you. Others?
I think it's amazing that she started all of this at the age of 50. That's the part that was just like, okay. So she raised a family and then left her husband. And then that's when she said, okay, I'm bootstrapping it. And then now I'm going to get to work. So that's just amazing. And all these tributes too.
Yeah, if you look at the tributes on the right-hand side, and many of those people were there, not all, but some had video. So. Any other comments?
And just short of 100 years.
Yeah, 99 years old. And Councillor Clark, that's probably what I was more impressed with too. Well, I'm impressed with all of it, but certainly her age at 50. She starts on her own path. So, all right. If there's nothing else, we have that in the minutes. And just one short piece. We did reach out to the tribe and asked them if there was an appropriate kind of tribute that we could do here in Wood Village. And through the conversation with the tribe, we've identified that we will plant a tree and we'll leave it up to, we won't have to decide that right now, but we'll certainly plant a tree and do a short inscription and dedicate that tree to her. Okay. Thank you. Any citizen comments?
We do have one. We were anticipating they might be here. They indicated they would, but not here. Maybe they got caught up in crosstown traffic. But anyway, a person came in last week after receiving one of our letters indicating it's not okay to park on the grass. They live in the original village on Cedar, and they came in quite upset with us telling what they can or can't do with their property, since they pay their taxes. Their bank, who owns their mortgage doesn't care. And there are certainly other properties that are bringing down the area, tall grass vegetation more than his. And it's a stupid rule. And he was going to come here and tell you that since they're not here, I'm passing on the message so we can reconnect with the individual later in this week and say, look, sorry we missed you. We did pass along your message. You can watch it online for proof. And what can we do to get to some middle ground here? It's, you can park on pavement, asphalt, crushed rock, try to give a lot of options to fit a lot of scenarios. This person in driving by seems to have a lot of vehicles, not sure if it's larger household, teenagers, that kind of thing. But certainly, what can we do to just, you can live how you want to live, and we have the minimal aesthetics for the community, and we can just keep on moving forward. So that's what we're going to strive to do now that, again, they're not here, but we're passing on the message.
Okay,
Mayor, I can
Yes.
address this on the history, is that we had a lot of people immediately take this as that, wow, this is really cool. So they cleared their grass areas and they built crushed gravel and built ways where they could park their cars on top of that. And so they took it as a positive note.
Yeah, we actually researched this, and you were here on council. It was
Yeah.
2007. I actually
Yeah.
wrote it as an intern.
Yeah.
And it was in response to community upset about cars parked kind of every which one, front lawns, side lawns, and the things, and reinforced last springtime at the open house saying, we want some more code enforcement, especially around when you look at all of our cases over the past 4 years, over 1,200% are parked vehicles, vegetation, and graffiti. So clearly something that
It's been on the books for a long time.
thanks for that history, Counselor Clark. See, you're 50, but you're
I'm
still.
old.
Yeah. The other thing I would just add to this too, if for the individual's sake, and it goes right along with the code was developed some years ago. I know just as a resident in Wood Village, I know I've been pretty outspoken with this council about vehicles parked on grass, 3 or 2 houses down from our residence. And that it was it was, detrimental to the neighborhood. It breeds, in that case, sometimes people walking through there and vandalism. And also Greg, and I'm sure you're going to express this with the individual, and hopefully we can get them back into the conversation. But that the codes are set to protect all of us and protect all our properties and safety and livability in the city. So thanks for working with them. And if they come to the next meeting, we'll hear again. So, but anyway, thanks for working with them. Public safety report. Chief Hemsworth, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. All right, hopefully you've all seen a copy of the activity report, but essentially what stood out this month, we have some of the same stuff. Oh, thank you, Greg. Some of the same stuff in previous. There was 3 hit and runs, researched all 3 of those hit and runs, and they were all on parked cars. There was 3 stolen vehicles, none of which were followed with an arrest. They were also, as you imagine, unattended or parked vehicles. There was a total of 189 self-initiated calls, which is greater than the previous 30 days, or actually going back just slightly higher than the average for the year. And same with dispatched, 161 dispatched calls for service as opposed to 141 last month, or 140 on the average. Other than that, we had a couple of missions this month that were focused in the city of Wood Village that probably led to some of the increase self-initiated stops. As I mentioned before, they have the patrol missions that they're working monthly. Each sergeant is preparing a patrol mission somewhere within the jurisdiction of Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. And these missions are just meant to be high profile, not necessarily indicated on one thing or another, but each mission has a dedicated livability issue that's been identified, whether that's pedestrian crossing or speeding or any of the other enforcement things. And that's what they're focusing on. So we're happy to see increased productivity and hopefully making a more livable, community. So.
Thank you. Questions from council?
When you're through with the missions, is there like a brief that you release? I'm sorry for my ignorance on that, but I know you can't talk about it probably beforehand.
Yeah, so each sergeant, they can follow the incident command system ICS model, and they prepare an ICS form of their projected mission, which comes to their respective lieutenant, in my case, the swing shift or the night shift. They say, this is the mission I want to do. And then they identify the personnel. And at the end of it, they do the debrief or the ICS 209 that says essentially what they found. Was their mission accomplished? Was there tools that would have helped them solve their mission? And then just basic statistics, like if it was a traffic stop mission focusing on, say, speed, then they'd say X number of vehicles were stopped, X were warned, and X number were cited.
That's public facing, like the debrief is like
The
accessible to the public. That's
The debrief, I think itself is internal, but then certainly we work with the communications unit to share some of the stats in that area or to let people know.
I see.
Yeah, so typically it's like the outcomes, how many people were pulled over, warning, citations.
Thanks.
And is that buried? I mean, not buried, but is it in this report then? Or how does that?
It's not specifically in this
Okay.
report. The overall will show that, like in this particular report, we had more self-initiated calls, and then that is broken down as far as if it was a traffic stop or a pedestrian stop. I think this month's the mission that I saw in Wood Village was a traffic stop mission with the shift, and so it probably slightly increased the overall average.
I think.
So on the welfare checks, I see a lot where they're unable to locate the person, and then there's on the missing person. I was just curious after this is over, do we get any kind of report of it if we do find them? Or
If they find the missing person.
yeah, do we find these missing people or?
Yeah, so I don't know that it's articulated in this like bar graphs of studies that we get, but I know in this particular circumstance that the one missing person is certainly of the top priority, right? If somebody goes missing, if they're a juvenile or endangered in any way, shape or form, whether that be based on medical, mental, age, anything like that, the cases goes to detectives. In this particular instance, it was we recovered like within a couple of hours and found for the missing person. I believe that you're talking about that case. Is that correct, Counselor?
Well, I see like where this one on the last page of the disturbance, or on the second to last one, welfare check, and the response time was 3 minutes, and on the scene was 11 minutes, and then report written. Okay, but on some of them, it was just they didn't find anybody. So, like one at the top of that page. And so I was just, like, wow, that's kind of disturbing. It's like we get these reports on people who are killed on the roads and things, and you get your finalization of it, who we had, I think, I can't remember, John, how many people were? 17 people lost their lives in the last month on the roads. And it's like, when, there's a termination for it, right? And so I look at this and I go, well, who are these people that were missing in Wood Village? Like, this is kind of scary.
My log is a little bit different than yours in that I printed the log that's the service call for the law enforcement. It gives me a more in-depth description. So it's longer than your log. I can certainly find when you're talking about.
If they're okay, you can just say they're okay.
Yeah. Well, I know for a fact that we had a person I was working that it was a juvenile that had been separated from their folks, and they were found a short time later at a neighbor's house. But as far as a welfare check in general, that could be a variety of things. That oftentimes we get a person that's what we considered a slumping or is basically asleep in their vehicle, and a citizen or a member of the community calls that in and says, "Hey, there's a person that should be checked on," and then the officer
I've even
deputy
done that.
drives there.
Yeah.
Sure. And a lot of times that they're found there and then the disposition is whatever. But and oftentimes the person is gone before they arrive. So we never
Yeah.
do get to know if, were they tired or was there a medical emergency or,
Right.
we just simply won't know on those.
Okay.
A related question, do the sheriff deputies, do they all carry Narcan, like related to the slumping, I guess?
They do. Yeah, everybody is trained in the use of Narcan and is provided Narcan
And carries it?
and carries it. Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you, chief.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
Next item, review of the bills paid. Any questions about those? No questions? The consent agenda. Moving down, on the consent agenda are the minutes from March 28th, April 11th, and April 25th. And the city events, the community cleanup day. If there's any debrief there that anybody would like to share? The report is in your.
We hauled away a lot of stuff.
Yeah. 14 and a half tons.
It's about 15 and a half tons. Haven't seen those numbers in a long time. So again, don't know if things built up through COVID and, even though we held the event, just again, it was also a nice day, nice weather leading up to it. Either way, a bit of a wait for some folks during some peak times, have been backed up on Wood Village Boulevard there, but everyone very pleasantly pleased and surprised that there was some on-site help to assist them. Big shout out to Scott and Job Corps for bringing some great volunteers to help out too.
For
So
sure.
nice event. It's good to clean up the town.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I just have a small comment is, because I think you mentioned last year was about like 93 people-ish showed up. And so for this year to have close to 200, it'd be good to identify, how the word got out there. Is it the newsletter, social media, word of mouth? To help us identify the best way that is getting transmitted out there and then utilize that to share other things that we're trying to, ensure that the community knows about.
Yeah, because while the location changed, it just essentially went across the street. So it wasn't even that could be a factor, although that location is perfect for this event, plenty of room to stage things and yeah, no idea why, because the last several years we've been seeing, sub 100 people, including repeat trips, and this year was busy.
I thought it was cute that they actually kept track of which type of computers were in weight, like iMacs and desktops and laptops and tablets. Oh my, yeah.
We didn't do anything different this year, other than location.
For
It
the
was a
most
nice
part, it was
day.
about the same. It was a nice day and the weather leading up to it was nice. So people had time if they had stuff in a back corner of the yard or under a deck or in the shed. There was time to vehicle. That's really the main difference. Social media is slightly different posts, but newsletter about the same, social media about the same, website about the same. Again, it just might have been, oh gee, we're back to business and we've had the stuff sitting for a while. Time to get rid of it.
I think the year before was quite warm. Do you recall that? Trying to remember, the three of us were there for sure, and I don't remember.
The location.
We're trying to get you to do a hula hoop, remember? So was that a hot day or not? And it was also in the Lowe's parking lot.
21 was a very hot day, or it got to be warm. We also had longer hours. Last year, I believe it was also in Lowe's parking lot, cool and cloudy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it raining? Yeah.
Drizzly.
Was it
yeah.
around the same date?
Yeah.
Same, okay.
And so we try to keep it consistent. Either way, got rid of a lot of good stuff.
Then are we debriefing it now or are we
Well, no, we're not.
Or not?
I don't, do we have you have a presentation on?
No, it was just a staff report. So if there were
Yeah.
questions, comments, or
Yeah.
otherwise,
Just
now,
for the
now's the
consent, but
time.
Yeah, you asked the questions.
Oh, I just thought it was a really great event. Yeah, it was really fun. And building I don't know, what's the word for that?
Garbage can bring
Collaborative.
people together.
Yes.
Yeah,
The
I
only
had the
thing-
drive of shame.
Yeah, we definitely all shamed.
Yeah.
Which was also fun.
Yeah.
And I think the only feedback or the thing, not feedback I was thinking of, and I know it's probably a lot, but there were things in there that were thrown away that I think could have been used, like yard stuff that people were like, could I have that? And then maybe some things we could set aside or something. like a-
We've done that in the past, and
Yeah.
for a few items, we did set them aside, or actually people like, oh, what's that? And they,
Yeah.
that's kind of the one-off. In the past, when we've set stuff for reuse, it ended up in the dumpster at the end of the day, because when we then tried to partner with like a reuse store or secondhand place, they didn't want it either.
That makes sense.
So
They
it's
didn't-
just one of those things. There are some stuff that someone could say, well, I could use that.
Yeah.
That tends to be kind of selective items, given the whole of it all.
That makes
We've
sense.
had years where
Thanks.
it's been nothing but barbecues. And then one year we had bicycles like crazy.
We had
At
two
the
mopeds
Baptist-
this year.
What?
Two mopeds came in this
That's
year
right. One right after the other.
from different people.
Yeah.
Coordinated.
But you remember the barbecues though came with a tie-in with the Lowe's. If you brought a barbecue,
that's
they gave
right.
a discount.
Weed eaters, had a lot of weed eaters one year. This year is just kind of a lot of everything.
Have we thought about donating those items,
Through-
like a nonprofit, for the ones that are like potentially
In the
been
past,
able to, like,
we've tried and they weren't nonprofit has been interested in a lot of, one year we collected quite a few. I think they must have run a daycare out of their home and had a bunch of the play equipment and that kind of stuff. No one wanted it. It ended up, we even took it after the event and tried to farm it out. We ended up going to the dump. No one wanted it. It is a bit surprising, but I mean, if people are there to get rid of stuff, they don't usually want to take stuff back.
Yeah, true. Well, I would. But it's just-
All right. Well, thank you. Sounds like it was a successful day.
Do we need a motion?
Yeah, I need a motion to approve this consent agenda that carried over into a discussion.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I second.
It's moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Resolution 17-2023 Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission budget. Welcome, Mr. Harden. Nice to have you here.
Jeez, guys. Yeah, awesome.
Just a little bit about the cleanup day. One of the repeat customers was a woman who walked every bit of her throwaway items across the street from Riverwood South. She made like 7 trips. She finally found a hand truck to bring some of the heavier things, but yeah, we got to know her pretty well. And then and I just want to say, Mayor, that was a very moving tribute to Catherine. You definitely cut and paste the right things. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Well, it's certainly a matriarch for that tribe that has been a tremendous influence. So
Yep.
thank you.
That's for sure. All right. Well, my name is Scott Harden and I'm here tonight, Mayor and Councilors, to present to you the MHCRC budget for your consideration and hopefully for approval. I'm joined online by Rebecca Givens. Rebecca is the Strategic Initiatives Manager for Portland, and she's the MHCRC Manager. Christy Manseth from Pacific Research and Evaluation to talk with you about the TechSmart initiative. And then from Metro East Community Media, John Lugton and David Elkin Braun. And so my name is Scott Harden. Like I said, I'm your volunteer representative on the Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission. I served for 10 years, left for a year. You were gracious enough to reappoint me. The salary didn't change remarkably from. And we were created in 1992 through an intergovernmental agreement between the cities of Fairview, Portland, Gresham, Wood Village, Troutdale, and unincorporated Multnomah County. And on behalf of the jurisdictions, we negotiate the rights of way fees from Ziply Fiber and Comcast to be able to provide cable service in our cities. We also monitor the ever-changing technological environment as it relates to local authority over public rights of way and making sure that we are able to continue to collect money, be compensated for the use of those rights of way. We're the consumer watchdog that assists consumers who have issues with their cable companies that they're unable to resolve on their own. And we are also the source for local solutions and local representation in media, in local media and in digital equity issues. There are 7 other volunteers like myself on the commission representing each of the smaller cities. And then there's a member from unincorporated Multnomah County, 3 from Portland. Each year we come to you to present this budget. This proposed 23-24 budget was approved by the commission at our May 22nd meeting. So in your meeting pack tonight, you have the proposed budget. You also have our annual report, and you have our goals for next year, and you have the results of the TechSmart initiative. We call it in my notes here, the TechSmart initiative impact report. We've also referred to it as the Making Meaning report. And you'll hear more about that from Christy in just a few minutes. In the next few moments, I'd like to give you just kind of a brief overview of the proposed budget and some of our planned activities for the coming year. And then I'll hand it over to the rest of my cohort. So through the intergovernmental agreement, each jurisdiction agrees to fund a portion of the MHCRC operating budget. And then also the operating and capital budget for either Metro East Community Media or the Portland budgets for Open Signal. We anticipate that the collection for Wood Village for use of their rights of way this coming year will be about $26,062, of which $15,637 goes to those 2 budgets at Metro East. $3,782 goes to the Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission, and about $6,643 comes back to the city. Long-term trends continue to reflect cord cutting. There are fewer people subscribing to cable, but budget dollars sort of remain stable for now because, the cable companies can always be counted on to increase their rates. And the money that they give us is a percentage of the money that they collect from their users. So in the coming year, we're going to kick off a strategic planning process with the member jurisdictions to develop a strategy for the Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission going forward and how we'll continue to serve the community. And, whether or not that remains just cable, or if we start moving into the broadband or cellular world as the way data is delivered and entertainment is delivered to people changes. And the proposed budget includes a slight increase in staffing. So we will move from 4 FTE to 4.9 FTE. And the staff is tasked with the ongoing franchise agreement and compliance with Ziply and Comcast and the negotiation with Comcast for a new rights of way contract. We continue to field the customer complaints. The staff oversees the meeting and the finances and all the programs of the commission, and they support schools and community and nonprofits that benefit from the PEG. We support the media centers, Metro East Community Media in Gresham and Open Signal in Portland, including an MHCRC board member who serves as an ex officio board member for the boards of both of those organizations. And the funding also supports limited professional services like legal counsel, advocacy work, and participation in national organizations. With the resources collected through the franchise, the commission, like I said, provides the capital and operating support to Metro East Community Media and Open Signal. Those are the 2 vital community-based organizations that ensure our communities have access to media technology training and diverse, local, and engaging video content on the cable system. And it's one of the ways that you can view this meeting. And Wood Village is a past beneficiary of a community competitive grant. The original cameras and set up to get us broadcast on TV came via one of those grants. And so, and then we provide capital grants to schools, libraries, public agencies, and community nonprofits. to support access to technology and training that promotes civic engagement, equity, and economic opportunity. Over the past few years, the commission wrapped up funding the TechSmart initiative. This was a near decade-long $16 million initiative, an investment aimed at improving economic outcomes for students. It was a partnership with All Hands Raised. If I can remember all of them, we were doing kindergarten readiness, third grade reading. I learned that 70% of our eventual high school dropouts did not learn at the third grade level at the end of third grade. And then sixth grade math credit attainment and high school credit attainment. And before I turn it over to Christy to talk about the Making Meaning report, I just want to steal a little bit of her thunder because I'm proud of what happened in our area as a result of the TechSmart initiative. So this data is actually pre-COVID, like a lot of things that TechSmart was hamstrung by the COVID. All the grant money went out, but being able to facilitate it in virtual school was not quite as easy as it might have been for some of the programs if school had been live. But the preliminary report from the Reynolds School District, where they were going for the 6th and 7th grade math attainment, that was the program they chose. And the reason was at that point in time, nearly 50%, 49.6% of their freshman students were leaving their freshman year not on track to graduate. And the most often missing credit was math. And so the numbers from the first cohort of the TechSmart initiative, on average, students by the end of the 7th grade had 5.3 credits in math for the first cohort versus the historical number of 4.12. So they went up over a credit attained as a result of the TechSmart initiative.
Scott, again, what's that called? What initiative?
TechSmart.
TechSmart.
Yep.
Okay.
And the language students, average math credit attained had been just a little over half a credit at 0.54. They moved to 1.24 credits attained in the first cohort. The special education students, SPED 0.52 historically moved up to 0.63. Students on free and reduced lunch went from just over half a credit at 0.55 to 0.92. And one of the focuses of the TechSmart initiative was that it would better benefit previously underserved communities and BIPOC students. And for students of color, they were at 0.55 credits attained historically by the end of the 7th grade, and they moved to nearly a whole credit at 0.95. And so, Christy will talk about the program as a whole, but I wanted to point out the success that we had here in our local district. And so I'll hand it over now to Christy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm going to share my screen so I can just share a couple of slides with you. I know I don't have much time, but I think it's nice to be able to see some of the results and it'll help me explain this. So is it okay if I go ahead and share my screen?
You betcha.
All right. Great. So, like Scott said, my name is Christy Manseth. I'm from an organization called Pacific Research and Evaluation here in Portland. And we've had the opportunity to be working with the Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission over the last 8 years to do some research on their TechSmart initiative. So they made a decision early on in funding these grants to the different Multnomah County school districts to have a research component of the grants. And so we've worked with the school districts over the years to collect data just to show kind of the impact of the grant funding on the teachers and the students in the districts. And I'm just going to share a couple of the findings with you tonight. And yes, he did already steal some of my thunder, so I won't have as much to share, but that's okay. Just to recap for you all, this funding, the MHCRC launched the TechSmart initiative for student success in the fall of 2014. And they had planned to invest approximately $19 million through 2023. Funding was cut short due to some changes in regulations, but they were still able to award $15 million, which was amazing. And so the goals of the TechSmart initiative were really first to help teachers really change their instructional practices through technology facilitated instruction, and in doing that change outcomes for all students. And then the second goal of the initiative was focused on really validating effective instructional practices by fostering kind of shared learning across the Multnomah County School Districts. And I'll talk a little bit about this as I go through it. So 6 districts were funded. You can see them listed here. There were a total of 9 projects funded. So Reynolds School District did have 2 projects funded through the initiative. I'll kind of call out Reynolds since I know that that's the most relevant to you all as I go through this. Reynolds was able to fund a lot of their grants were focused, like Scott said, on the middle and high school level. And you can see over here, different types of devices were funded through this grant program. I kind of wanted to talk about a few things that I felt like TechSmart, through our research, showed TechSmart was able to do for the districts. And so the first thing is that when I did interviews, I did data collection with these districts over the last 8 years, but I did some final interviews with the districts to kind of learn what they felt like was the most impactful and what things they were really able to do as a result of the funding that they wouldn't have been able to do if they didn't have this money. And the biggest thing that people said they were able to do was they were able to take some risks. And so they were able to try new technologies, they were able to try new instructional strategies, and they were able to try different formats of professional development because they had the additional funds. So I have some examples here on the screen. When I talked to the Reynolds School District, they told me that it really allowed them to take some instructional risks, like trying out a flipped classroom model, which is, I won't go into too much detail, but it's basically where the teacher records themselves on a device giving a lecture, and the students listen to the lecture at home. And then when they're in the classroom, they do more of a facilitation kind of group exercise stuff rather than sitting in the classroom and listening to the lecture. So it's called a flipped classroom. Allow them to take risks like that, allow them to purchase new expensive technology like 3D printers and short throw projectors for their math classrooms, which had big impacts that we heard from the teachers that we talked to. Oops, sorry, I skipped around a little bit. The other thing that we heard is that, and this won't surprise you, that the TechSmart schools and the TechSmart districts were really prepared for the pandemic. We heard we weren't expecting the pandemic, obviously, in our research design, and it threw us for some loops when we were trying to analyze student achievement data at the end of all of this. But we really saw some amazing impacts of this grant on the districts and the schools, that they were more prepared for the pandemic. They were already familiar with things like Google Classroom and other apps that teachers were using to teach remotely. The students knew how to use Chromebooks. The teachers already had established Google Classroom environments. They knew how to embed videos and links in classroom content. And the students were easily able to really log on to their devices. And then I think it's important to point out that TechSmart was really at the forefront of digital equity. There was an aspect of all TechSmart grants that really had to be focused on equity, and it showed up in a focus on high need schools in some districts. It showed up on digital access becoming a priority during the pandemic. One of the things that we learned during the pandemic was that giving a student a device doesn't necessarily mean that they have access. And so the districts learned, and Reynolds especially learned a lot about kind of what do they call them? Like desert, like Wi-Fi or internet, like deserts where there was no access, and they had to kind of be creative about giving students hotspots and really increasing access to students. And so those were some things that they learned about and that they were able to channel their funds towards. And then, like Scott mentioned, this was a partnership with the All Hands Raised initiative. And so the different projects were asked to focus on different outcomes. Reynolds did focus on 8th grade math and 9th grade credit attainment. Some of the stats that he read to you were focused on that. And part of our research was just to look at the TechSmart students in comparison to in Reynolds' case, a historical comparison group. And I won't go over the limitations of the student assessment data were really that the pandemic caused us not to be able to look at some of the student achievement data, the state testing data, because those didn't happen for a couple of years, but we were still able to look at credit attainment. And this is pretty similar to what Scott had said to you at the beginning, but in Reynolds, we saw that TechSmart students showed really promising findings in their first grant. By 7th grade, they had earned like a statistically significant higher number of overall math credits than their historical comparison group, which is what he mentioned. And then in those first two cohorts of TechSmart students, these historically underserved groups were also showing significantly higher math credit attainment than their historical comparison group. So these are very repetitive of what Scott had already said, but very impressive and findings. And I won't go into these other districts too much because I don't want to waste your time, but we also learned in our research kind of what's next for educational technology as people think about continuing to fund work in this area. There's just continued work around reframing the traditional role of the teacher, not kind of like I mentioned, with not spending so much time lecturing, but being more of a facilitator in the classroom. Definitely intentional use of applications. I think that came out of COVID, where being really intentional about what apps are used in the classroom and not just kind of going with whatever is out there. There's a lot more focus on student data privacy now as a result of COVID and lots of applications. And then the districts are always going to continue to focus on device maintenance and continued innovation. So I'm sorry if I went long. It's so hard for me to talk about that stuff in 5 minutes, but really wonderful things through this grant program that you all supported funding. So any questions for me?
Council? Well, thank you, Christy.
Yeah.
I will ask one question here, and we get into the depth of this. You don't have to have an answer for this, but when you started the cohort group data collection, were you able to follow them up through their senior year and graduation?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we started our first cohort in 2014 in 8th grade. So we should be able, we didn't actually look at them all. We could though. We have data through graduation for that cohort.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And before we go to the Metro East budget, if you'll allow me, some other things that came out of the TechSmart initiative was districts hiring technology coaches. Reynolds was one of the first, and we started to require that of the grant, is that you have a technology coach in the district. And that helped the teachers that were in the program, but it also helped the teachers all across the school understand better technology. And then, our first grant, I believe the first grant was $384,000 to Parkrose High School. It was Divide Devices, and it was to improve their Wi-Fi reach on their campus, so you could study at the football field if you wanted to. And they were way behind on their textbook cycle and buying and updating textbooks. And we asked them what they would do about devices. And the feeling in 2014 was that devices were near ubiquitous, and that, every student had one, and they wouldn't have to buy new devices because they could set up the program where the students use their own. And TechSmart and the Community Needs Ascertainment Grant and the county's municipal broadband study all pointed out the disparity that actually existed and how many homes didn't have devices. And like Christy said, even if they had a device, didn't have connectivity. Both those major studies pointed out that for most people, the price that they could afford for broadband was free. And so it really served to give us a better idea of what we were up against. And to that point, I'd really like to thank the city of Wood Village for the intro to computers class that we ran. And it's about 24 houses that didn't have a device before now that got one for free and got instruction on how to use it. And I think that the TechSmart initiative served to inspire some of that.
I have a question. So how do you guys obtain that data to know what households are in need of devices, hotspots?
Community needs ascertainment was twofold. It was both a scientific data gathering and then more of a non-scientific, which was surveys and focus groups. And so this was people that reporting to us directly whether or not they had a device in their home.
Then in turn, the school will present that.
Well, it's even the schools, they got a lot of devices from the TechSmart initiative. They ended up actually being pretty resourceful in the Reynolds School District. I think they got devices from Comcast. They got
Verizon.
From what used to be Frontier, and they bought devices with that. And it served to show other needs too. I mean, immediately when they sent the students on to distance learning, they also realized that with so many students in the classroom that were on free and reduced lunch that they might not eat. And so they had to spin up a lunch delivery program as well. And so we really learned a lot about ourselves, and not just because of COVID. Some of this work facilitated that learning. So next up, we have from Metro East, John Lugton and David Elkin-Brom to go over their proposed budget for 23-24. John, you're still on mute.
And I lost my video. Oops. So we like to roll. Anyway, good evening once again. Thank you for your time. I'm John Lugton and I'm joined by David Elkin-Brom. We're going to do a quick presentation for you all. If David could share the screen and then we'll get started and we'll try and keep this moving along. So one of the big things that's happened in the last year for us is we've had a little bit of a leadership change in the sense that we've actually moved to a shared leadership structure. And we've also seen a major change in our board. So we have a brand new board that is basically better at reflecting the community that we are trying to serve through our work. We've done a lot of work this year, a lot of the background work, getting our bylaws, working on our strategic plan. We've also been renewing our contract with the MHCRC. So for really the first time ever, we've taken a really close look at our budget and made it as pragmatic and realistic as we possibly can. Can we move along to the next slide, if that's possible? This is the wonderful mobile media lab, which was funded by a community technology grant through the MHCRC. It enables us to take filmmaking, podcasting, digital storytelling out into the community. And this is from last summer. And really by hitting community events, we're not only able to work with children and youth, we're also able to connect with their families. And then that allows us other opportunities, as you can see here, to actually take it out for more of a kind of tabling experience where you can find out, you can use an iPad, as you see there, that are little VR goggles on there for your phone, all those kind of things. You can sign up for workshops, etc. So it's a great way, again, for us to get out into the community and connect. We also, partner with the library, again, a couple of times a year. And we offer them like a kind of a YouTube or a TikTok camp, which has been very successful and very, very, very popular. And then the next thing we've been able to do through a partnership with the city of Gresham is the Summer Kids in the Park, whereby basically we bring the mobile media lab along. We have all these fun, all this fun tech and gadgets for folks to use, and we get to have a little bit of an experience together. And those have been really great, and they take place at different parts of Gresham throughout the summer. The next thing that we kind of do is basically also, you know, when we do this kind of education, what we might call youth media education, we're actually taking it out into the schools. 2 summers ago, we were working with Reynolds at one of their big summer camps, and they loved it. It was absolutely fantastic. We hope we can get back on their books soon. We've worked with Gordon Russell Middle School. They produce a little local news show, which has been a lot of fun with them. And we work with some of the Gresham High School students in their journalism program to actually teach them how to use the gear you see, the tripod, the iPad, and the microphone. Just simple storytelling techniques that we know that we can share that make everybody's life a lot more viewable, shall we say. Let me see what's next. Oh, yes. Our friends at Rosewood Initiative very much and really, this is about digital literacy. This is about digital equity. This is about changing the way you think about these things. Like the internet, as Scott was just like basically saying, it's now a utility. It's like your electric, your gas, or your water. And so actually, some of these people, this is the first time they've maybe put their hands on technology. For some of these people, they didn't learn to read or write in their own language, and now we're expecting them to move into this language. We've worked with Rohingya group, Latinx group, and Nepalese, and this is again, Scott also mentioned the introduction to computers, which has been great. We did it in Wood Village. It was absolutely fantastic. Has been a great partnership with Free Geek, and we still continue to try and get some of those elements out. So if people really do need to be, getting online, having an email address, you can't apply for a job these days without one. So basically, we're trying to get those folks those skills as quickly as they can. And they have a lot of fun doing it. As you can see, the instructors obviously get to eat some delicious food as we go along. Our newest adventure, in training, has been with a cohort model. We worked with the Community for Positive Aging and Life Skills Oregon, 2 very different groups. But what we find is that as opposed to our traditional classes, which we still offer on a quarterly basis, attendance is up. Mainly underserved communities get served. And this presents us with a nice opportunity to maybe look for some grant funding as we move forward with that. Let me see, what else do we have? There's Life Skills Oregon. So let's move along. I'll keep moving along. So just so you know, we still get lots of programming coming in for the channels. The numbers, surprisingly, COVID didn't ding us too badly on that. We also have this great little resource, which is our community bulletin board. And it is so niche that it literally just covers the tiny, tiny area that we all call kind of East County. And therefore, your message can be aired multiple times through that medium. The other thing that we're probably more familiarly known for is our government meeting coverage. And we cover about 214. The number of hours of programming varies. It sometimes gets as high as 400. We've tried to do everything we can there. We've upped the rotation of the meetings, and we also like coming up next is also a new feature that we have. And like we're doing now, we're doing this hybrid meeting. And, you know, being there at the time of COVID, being able to step in and make it a seamless transition to virtual, and then also being part of helping with the House bill, that means we have to keep this virtual component for public testimony open, is something that we're really proud of being able to do. And during COVID, you know, we didn't miss a beat. So we were very, very positive about that. A new initiative that David and I are both working on is closed captioning. And you may say, well, I can get my captions on YouTube. And then I would ask you, how accurate are they? I don't know. Less than 95%, I presume. So what I didn't know was that 5% of the world is deaf or hard of hearing. And now people using public transit, we all use captions all the time. The program we have that will do the captions will enable us to go in and change any errors to any of the words that are there. So for example, Salish, it's who knows what that would turn up as, but we can go back in and then make the change, and it will live with us for the duration. So we're going to be rolling this out in the not so distant future. We're still testing it at the moment, but from what I've seen, it seems to be exceptionally accurate, which is great. I think moving along to some of the more production-y kind of pieces that we do. Food Foray is a show purely based in East County about indigenous foods, for want of a better word, ethnic grocery stores. That's the kind of principle behind here. Judy Bluehorse was with us for our Follow the Water series, which ended up getting shown at a film festival here in Portland. And then we obviously have our helpful gardener who've been working with. Both of these projects were based around 60 government agencies and nonprofits all across Oregon coming together to get the information out to very, very specific audiences. So we're very proud of that work. And again, I would just say that, you know, Food Foray, it's really interesting, is really exploring East County's food diversity and telling the story of the people who are making the food. So we're really happy to get that out there. Hopefully we'll be launching a small version of that this summer. And we just want to say thanks to everybody, the MHCRC, and all of our supporting municipalities, especially Wood Village this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Every time I hear this, I learn more and more about the extensive work you're doing and the mission that you're on. So thank you very much. Any questions from council?
Wow, no, I'm just so grateful, and I'm just overwhelmed by the amount of work and amazing things you do for our community.
I do have a question surrounding programming. And so I saw that you guys do an array amount of programming, but it's really looks like it's more centralized in Gresham. And I know you guys did some projects in collaboration with the city here with Free Geek and doing some of those. But looking at those opportunities, especially for youth in the summer, how would we go about a partnership to doing something like that more, I guess, do it more consistently out here in Wood Village per se?
Yeah, absolutely. What I would do at this stage is I would put you in touch with our director of volunteers education, and we can take it from there. And I can quite honestly say it was only this week that that Seth was, you know, asking me, so like, who do you know at Reynolds in the media departments? So we're definitely trying to get Reynolds back on our radar and working with them. But yes, we would love the opportunity to offer camps like close by or in Wood Village for sure, especially seeing as you have Wi-Fi in that park right next door. So that might be an easy sell for us. So yeah, I can definitely put you in touch.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll connect tomorrow, John, you and me, and we'll get something going.
Thanks, Greg.
Other questions? when, just to piggyback on that, when you talk, tomorrow and start looking at some of those, can we do that, that tech night we had here where we, you mentioned it, Scott, last year?
Computers.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
welcome to computers.
Are we able to do that again or?
That wasn't just one night. That was I think over 5, I think it was 10 sessions over 5 weeks,
5 weeks,
2 nights a week. Because Free Geek at the time didn't have any free laptops and things because the demand was so high, the city through its ARPA funds bought those. That's certainly something we can explore. Again, if Free Geek and, connecting back with Metro East and just seeing what we can maybe come up with to
Right.
see what the demand is. And
Well, that'd be great, to have maybe a follow-up, report. So.
The extreme value at Free Geek, of course, was that the computers were free. One of the drawbacks is that so is the software, they're Linux based. And so, one advantage that the students had in our classes was that they were studying on Windows computers. And so, they learned the Office suite and things like that, or about it at any rate. And it, more clearly reflected the sort of computer that they might be using if they were at work or at school.
Well, I think Councilor Campbell's conversations there could lead to other things too. So thank you again. If there's no further questions, I believe this does.
I'm so excited about this. One more comment. John mentioned 1,491 hours of programming. So about 4 years ago, a prior executive director for Metro East sat at temporary city hall. And when he pointed out that many hours of programming, it was more unique programming than Netflix had produced. So they're busy down there.
That's quite a data point.
And it's a real value to our community. And, so I won't thank you yet because you gotta, like you said, you gotta vote, but
Yeah.
I'm holding the thanks.
Well, thanks again. And we do need to vote on this, but once again, our appreciation out to Mount Hood Cable Regulatory for the work you're doing. Is there a motion?
I just have one question, and I probably should have asked it when Rebecca was here, but how did they get the funding for the Tech Smart? Was that a federal grant or is that a federal group funding?
Money comes to the MACRC in a couple of ways. So we mentioned that the cable companies had to pay to be in the rights of way, and that's 5% of their gross receipts. And then there's also the 3% that they pay to support the PEG-INET, which is primarily the municipals, the schools, and the libraries. But a lot of it's coming from that 5%. And Comcast actually has the opportunity to review each of the grant projects, particularly the ones that are involved in the community technology program, and annually they're a very positive supporter of the work that we do with that money.
And so through that money, that's where the close to originally $19 million came from?
Yeah, and then I believe so. Rebecca, correct me if I'm wrong on that, or if there were other sources. And then but the organization itself is funded by the intergovernmental agreement and the rights of way fees that you graciously send along when you approve the budget.
Thank you.
Other questions? Is there a motion?
I move to approve resolution 17-2023, a resolution approving the 2023-24 Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission budget.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to approve the Mount Hood Cable Regulatory fiscal year budget of 23-24. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And I just want to close by saying how proud we are of Wood Village at the MHCRC, because you're very proactive on digital equity issues, the free Wi-Fi in the park, and the efforts that you make with businesses along Sandy to expand, and the welcome to computers classes. The 5 of you and the staff here punch well above your weight class, and you're an example for all of the cities that are part of the MHCRC. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. But you were a part of a bunch of that as a former mayor here. So we're well on our way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Next item, resolution 18-2023, Gresham Fire inspection fees. John?
That John or?
You all make a lot of presentations, like.
They had 3 weeks this time to make them up.
Yeah,
Yeah, lots of PowerPoints.
yeah.
That's what we pay them.
Good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. In your packet, you were presented with a staff report, resolution, and fire fee schedule for resolution 18-2023, the Gresham Fire fee update. In 2022, you approved resolution 24-2022, which was the fire fee IGA with Gresham Fire. In that IGA, it did state through 2025 that each July 1, a 5% increase would be tacked on to all fees. With this, there are some alternatives. City Council can direct staff to look at an alternate or change the fees. This in fact would take a lot of staff time. And so with just the 5% increase with cost of living, as you know, the last 12 to 24 months, what that is. Another alternative is to approve the resolution. And that is staff's recommendation is to approve the
We're
resolution.
going to do the first one, John.
Yeah.
I recommend the first one.
And so this actually supports goals number 2, exemplary police, fire and building services. Goal 6, effective local, state and regional partnerships. Again, these regional partnerships, we depend on those with IGAs. And so at this time, staff again recommends that we approve this resolution. And before that, if you have any questions, please let me know.
Any questions?
How much do we, this might be too big of a question, but how much do we pay for inspection fees every year? You go,
So it depends.
We don't pay it. This would be if outside parties either need an inspection or get like a citation or
Oh.
whatnot. So this is the fee schedule Gresham Fire uses for the cost of its services directly related to, call it stuff outside of their response with the city.
okay, so
If
we're
that
paying,
makes sense.
it doesn't. We're paying them. Sorry.
No.
Customers directly for the inspection.
Oh, not the city.
But we have to, right, but we have to adopt the fee schedule
Oh,
any of our Wood Village residents.
all right.
But we didn't negotiate this. As John said, they've worked and it's a consistent fee
I see.
and we've added a 5%.
Yeah, 5% is the incremental increase each year for cost of living and increase in cost of services.
Thank you.
They're kind of like the water or our code or permitting. We use Gresham a lot. And we just, the fees are just passed through.
I see. Okay, yeah. Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
With
Any other clarifications or?
just with the IGA sunsetting in the soon, I bet staff is looking to have discussions of what that further looks like.
If you want to wait 2 minutes.
There's a perfect segue from this
A little
into
further
the-
down on the.
Yeah. So this is, we need to take action on it.
I move to adopt resolution 18-2023, updating Gresham Fire fees for fire safety inspections and permits as provided for the municipal code section 8.28.060 from City of Gresham Fire.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, John,
Thank you.
we adopted those fees.
We adopted them. So good.
All right, now this one gets a little more complicated.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so let's talk about that IGA.
One of Greg's favorite things is fire safety. That's what he did for his master's degree.
Is it really?
Yeah, my capstone project was on fire service and preventing fires in university settings. For the University of California, Irvine. Talk a lot about that offline if you want. We're going to focus on kind of fire service for Wood Village and the Forest City area. So we got an expert. This is a huge topic. And one thing, you'll see in the staff report under the recommendations, looking for a direction. I want to make it clear, we don't need that direction tonight. I don't expect it tonight. We're trying to unpack 30 years of history, plus a lot of moving parts with our other jurisdictional partners here. So while we have some thoughts, it's really to start the conversation tonight, let you get some information. What more information do you want? Do you need? Maybe what are the other cities up to? And then, coming to decision or a framework or a priority. So we're going to talk a little bit of history, which some of you have more than others. We want to talk about what Gresham's up to. Then we're going to talk about the actual study that we commissioned from USC, and then kind of what some next steps could look like and what you want some next steps to be. So as stated, this conversation goes back 30 plus years. When we used to be with Fire District 10, and that was something the three cities used to be part of. And around discussions happened in early 1990s as that rate per 1,000 was relatively high compared to the service people thought they were getting. And Gresham approached the cities and say, hey, we think we can provide it at a better value. So a vote was taken to de-annex from Fire District 10 and then go with City of Gresham. Ironically, right near the same time, measures 5, not 5 and 50 passed, but that whole soiree of property tax limitation started passing right as we moved away from a separately taxed district to now we're funding it in-house with no ability to increase our rates to help cover incremental costs of that service. So timing is what it is. But we did come to agreement in 95 with Gresham for fire services that was renewed in 2005. I don't know a lot of the history on that renewal in 2005. There's not a lot in our records. My assumption is it was relatively straightforward, probably some tweaks here and there. What I do know, and I'm going to call it contentious in 2015 because the council at the time actually sent Gresham Fire a letter saying, after that, we are canceling this service. Gresham at the time was pushing for a very large rate increase. And there were thoughts not just from Wood Village Council, from the other two cities, Troutdale and Fairview, that again, you don't have an ownership stake. We don't control outcomes. We're not sure we're getting, response times that meet the community's demands and needs. There are other options available to us. And so the three cities commissioned a Portland State study in 2014 to actually review those options. We did ultimately renew with Gresham. Gresham kind of came back to the table. We all came back to the table. The IGA focuses more on how to get out of it and on, a complex calculation for an annual index and not so much on service standards, ownership stakes, et cetera. It works. People are safe, protected, but that IGA expires in 2 years. And so we've been having for the last couple of years various conversations at different levels about what to do with this. And it's been known and on record that Gresham has expressed a desire to increase that cost of fire and emergency service for the three cities. So again, a bit of background on those service discussions. So the Portland State study in 2014, it did highlight that the way Gresham Fire works is a relative value, the way they staff their response vehicles and some of the things they work, their scheduling. But it's a fire response, not so much a medical response, which is a predominant call load. And that was what the 2014 numbers showed. They didn't change from the current study. It's still predominantly now more of a medical response, less than a fire response, especially compared to when you look 20, 30, 40 plus years ago. The 2014 study also outlined options for a 3-city fire department, kind of, whether it's all paid, a hybrid between volunteers and paid. That really resonated with some elected officials, not so much for Wood Village, but from the surrounding communities. And if you talk with some of them today, they still think that's a good approach. It's a costly approach, but we'll talk some more very rough numbers here shortly. So in 2020, Gresham got a new fire chief. And he saw some things again around the service area, the cost for service needs, and he thought, let's put together a working group, call it Safer Council, with the 4 cities, Fire District 10, and just look at kind of again what is fire service today and what are options to meet that demand. The group met, I think, 5 or 6 times over the course of 8 months and came up with a recommendation that looking at a district for that Forest 30 area is an approach we ought to look at. Unfortunately, right when that work group wrapped up its work and made that recommendation, Gresham leadership changed. As you know, 2020, a lot of stuff happened at Gresham and whatnot. And they got their feet back underneath them and started looking at things. And they said, well, you know, this is more than just fire we need to look at for our community. We need to look at all these things and all these needs. So they hit pause on that effort to do a comprehensive citywide evaluation. And we'll talk in a couple of slides about the outcome of that, because basically from our perspective, that's where that died. And then in October of this past year in 2022, the 3 cities gathered because there's thoughts of, hey, you know what, we're 3 cities, there could be a lot of synergy, economies of scale. Let's talk about where we can share some services. And that meeting quickly moved towards, you know, public safety as a whole, police, fire, et cetera. And the outcome was, yeah, you know, those are areas of common interest. We all contract with the same providers. We ought to strategize, coordinate, work together. After that meeting, Troutdale said, well, we already have our process in the works, so we're going to do that. No judgment there, just that's what happened. So again, that's where that died. So the city of Gresham, the 2015 agreement, so the current agreement had an initial fixed rate per thousand of $1.56 per thousand assessed for the cities, with then a very complex escalator that really didn't necessarily matter because it was capped at 4.5%. And that's where we've been ever since that agreement, if we've always hit the cap. What that has done is then over the 8 years of that agreement is if you look at a per thousand rate, the cities are paying something different per thousand. For Gresham, they don't like that. They feel, well, we're now subsidizing these folks because we're paying higher per thousand than they are. You can also, again, look at it. We don't control any of their costs. So we kind of talk internally, you know, we're renters, they're owners. They choose to put in an expensive furnace. They chose to do that. We don't control those costs. So in May of 22, Gresham did complete their comprehensive service study and cost evaluation, and a portion of that dealt with fire is attached to your staff report. And according to that report, it indicated that Gresham Fire needs about 30 to 32 million a year in operating expenses to do what it essentially currently does. If you were then to spread that over the cities, their report indicated that'd be a 70% increase for the city. What that means for dollar wise, our current budget for the upcoming year is about $550,000. That would increase to about $900,000 a year, or, you know, almost 90% of our property taxes for fire service alone. Now, that's not saying that's what Gresham would propose to us or do. That's just what the study said. Hey, if the cities are paying their proportionate share, that's the rate. As we all know, Gresham went out for an operating levy, didn't pass. They're now looking at what to do about that. And, you know, I don't know what they're going to decide to do. I'm not sure they know just yet what they're up to, but we do know, and this is a quote from one of their electeds, that they, as in the 3 cities, should be funding a lot more than they do. So we certainly know that we can anticipate in the upcoming negotiations, if it goes that way to renegotiate an agreement, they're going to look for more money. And there's certainly, that's not a bad approach. And there's certainly ways we can craft and work within that. And we'll talk about that shortly.
Whose quote was that?
One of their counselors at a meeting they had, I think it was June 6th, which was the meeting after they realized, you know, the election didn't pass. The budget they had put together included those revenues. So they had to start how we're going to do this. So in that discussion, that was a quote that made the paper actually, which is how I got it. So What we decided to do as a city after that October 22 meeting, when call it the other partners said, well, either we're not ready or we're doing our own thing. We said, well, then we need to do our own thing. We need to put some of our own destiny in our hands and figure out an approach that works for us, represents our community. So we worked with USC, who charges grad students as part of graduation to do complex reports and analyses at no charge to us. So
Haven't seen all that.
suckers who pay to do a study. And really, because it's you know, about a 12-week time frame, it's not 6 or 9 months like Portland State had. We said, look, take that 2014 study, take some new data that we have, some updated reports, and really kind of do an update to that study. Where are we at today? So look at the call load, the types of calls, responses, and this is all based on reports we could get for Gresham. And then unfortunately, that did happen in Gresham. I want to say it was in 21. It was their analyst who handled all their fire reports and took data from 911, could sort through the mess and put something meaningful together. He passed away. And that left for a while a pretty big hole in that reporting. So there are some gaps in the reports, but we took, you know, annual reports, quarterly reports for all that we had to put something together. The team also compared that to national trends, national approaches. One of the students on the team was actually a firefighter for LA County, so had some unique perspectives and insights to how they operate, also connections with other departments. And then they developed kind of a series, well, here are things you can choose from, or here are things how other places work. And I called it a soft recommendation because it wasn't thou shalt do this, because as you know, if you read the whole thing or executive summary, there's not a magic box solution. This is, you know, very complex with a lot of layers, and some of those layers involve the county. And so, you know, they provided, if you do this, here are some thoughts, you know, this may be an option. So it's a soft recommendation. So some of their findings, again, not too dissimilar from 2014. All calls, about 60% are medical. When you take out canceled calls, you know, call and route, that kind of thing, stuff that didn't necessarily get a full response, that's about 80%, which is what we would expect for actual responding calls. 80% are medical. What that equates to is, you know, one about every day, slightly less than one a day call. And it's about one actual fire call a month. That's the response for Wood Village. And not unlike other departments around the country, they're geared towards fire response, even though a lot of stuff has transitioned to medical. And there's a lot of reasons, you know, for that. Again, some of out of our control compared to other departments you may see around the country or even the state. So like the PSU study, you know, Gresham Fire, it's viable, potentially cost effective. And the argument made is, look, if Gresham's going to ask you to pay more, you ought to have a bigger stake in this operations and have some kind of control over response times, response types, cost containment, that kind of thing. Didn't get into details of how we could do it or how that could look or work, but basically, if they're going to ask for more, you should get something more administratively. They did some, I'll call it back at envelope, very rough numbers based on some other similarly sized departments for a 3-city department. And that varies, you know, is it volunteer, professional, hybrid, but basically you can ballpark it somewhere between $8 and $10 million a year to operate a 3-city department, which if you run the numbers from what Gresham says we should be paying, it's about $8 or $10 million. And that actually raises a whole other question. So if collectively the 3 cities are paying, we'll just say 8 million to work with Gresham Fire, or 8 million to run their own, you know, full on local control comes with its own basket of special needs. You know, you have a different basket over here. So that becomes a very complex policy question. If you're paying about the same, what are your pros and cons with that? Looking at a fire district, and again, whether it's 3 or 4 cities, will change the overall rate, what you need to charge and whatnot. But going to a district would relieve cities of their general fund contributions towards fire because it would be separately taxed. That means then community members property taxes go up, and running it in these numbers, the 260 to 280 are kind of based one off of that 32 million amount and fire district's 10's current rate of 280 1,000. For the average household in Wood Village, which is assessed about just over $200,000, that means about a $550 increase. That's for a single family home, the average one. So, kind of either way you slice and dice it as it's currently formed, it's wanting more resource. The one question that hasn't really been asked or even answered, and this goes back to SAFER, is why does it cost so much? And what are the other options to do something about that? Going back to, a $900,000 payment, Gresham Fire does about 450 calls a year for Wood Village. The Sheriff's Office, and again, I'm not trying to compare apples to
Ladders.
a non-fruit, because you can't compare police and fire. You just can't. And Gresham Fire does 450 calls. Their most expensive, partner. Sheriff's Office did 350 calls last month at a less rate. Again, I'm not saying you can compare one to the other. It kind of starts begging the question, why is this cost driving so much? And what are some other options?
And with the district, that would also require that there is an oversight committee for that.
Correct. And depending on how that's formed, let's just say for hypothetical purposes, the 4 cities vote to rejoin Fire District 10. Well, they currently have a board, but that board then now be expanded ideally to have representatives from each community. So again, Wood Village as an entity wouldn't have direct control, but ideally would at least have a member on the board. Again, that would take a vote of the people, and it's a lot of money.
Go ahead, Greg.
Fire trucks cost more than police cars.
Yeah.
You had 12, anyway, sorry.
So-
Go on.
Some other considerations, other factors. So Multnomah County controls the AMR contract. And if you've seen some of the reports in the news lately about some of the news with slow response times, non-availability, to say we have no control over AMR is, I don't like saying it. It's also pretty close to the truth. It's very closely held at the county. Fortunately, as of late, it looks like the new county chair and the commissioners are paying more attention to that than they have in the past. However, the county controls ambulance transport. So LA County, for example, actually even Tualatin Valley. So it's fire and rescue. So part of their job is they do transport. So if someone calls with the medical, they show up with the medical unit. They can then transport to where they need to go. They can then bill insurance or otherwise to recoup some of those costs. Not saying you want to use that for a revenue generator and you're looking for people's bad days to, get a revenue source. It does offset the real cost of providing the service, because what happens today, someone calls 911, I'm having a medical issue. Gresham Fire shows up, and they show up often before the ambulance. They can't leave until the ambulance shows up. So if an ambulance is 12, 15 minutes out, Gresham Fire is sitting there waiting for the private sector to get there.
But they're also the paramedics too. Gresham Fire is.
Yeah, but they can't transport. What also happens,
Right.
and Gresham Fire has told us this, AMR can be understaffed. So Gresham staff will go in the ambulance to make sure that the patient, the person is getting quality medical while they're getting to hospital or otherwise. It's a good thing. It's too bad AMR is not a better solution to some of this, and we're kind of hamstrung on some options because of that county stronghold of it. Still have Measure 5 and 50 constraints in terms of how much you can collect, compression, et cetera. You still have then 3 other cities involved in this complex, larger regional discussion. What's going to work for Gresham? What does Troutdale want to do? What's Fairview going to do? And to try to get everyone on the same page, probably very tricky. And then again, that evolution of fire service, it's gone from fighting fires, but because of programs like inspections and things, not a lot of fires. That's a really, really good thing. We succeeded in reducing a lot of commercial and residential fires.
That
So-
industry needs to catch up with.
And so it transitioned to medical, but it's still staffed as fire.
To give you an idea, though, my son was within 250 feet of the emergency entrance at a Providence hospital, and they had to call an ambulance. So it tells you how governmentally regulated it is and how strong AMR is in controlling who's going to do what. And I was, to say the least, I was very upset watching nurses and doctors step over the top of him while he was having a seizure and them telling me I needed to get him out of the way of the entrance of the door. And I was like, what is this? But
Well, the AMR issue, as your anecdotal evidence, is a mess. And the county does have control over that. And I think it's a longer term solution to get AMR. And the rates and the response times in East County. It's a little further out than we're going to be able to do at this point, but this is a piece of this puzzle that makes it harder for us.
Yeah, don't want to distract from the
That's what I
fire
was-
portion,
that's
but
where I was going.
yeah, wanted to point, it is a piece of the puzzle and it's a complex puzzle. So kind of to do a recap here and maybe have some more dialogue conversation, because again, it's a lot to unpack and I did it in 12 slides in a 3-page staff report. There's a lot more going on than that provides, but we wanted to start this, get you thinking about it. So again, Gresham, they're in the middle of Gresham stuff, trying to figure out just the next year. Yeah, quote that, yeah. But we do know that they've given an indication that if they're going to continue to provide the service, they want starting their committee, they have a public safety committee looking into all of this. I don't know what Fairview is or isn't doing at the moment. I know they've been having some other priorities, other discussions. I actually think they're more in a wait and see approach of kind of where's Troutdale going to land? Where's Gresham going to land? So that brings us to, what do we want? And to kind of bullet point some buckets. Okay. Do we focus on the IJ? What could that look like? What do we want out of that? What does Gresham need out of that? Is it a 3-city approach to an independent fire service with the 3 cities paid either by a, district out of a special new district, or do we try to fund it out of our general funds? Or is it, again, that fire district with 3 or 4 cities with or without fire district 10? Because one thing I think we all want, I think we can all agree on, we want an efficient and a cost-effective service that provides needs to our community members. How we get there, is a big question mark. So again, we don't need to pick a direction tonight. It really is intended to break down the big picture, 30 years of history in about 10 minutes to see just what are additional questions you want, what do you need, who else should we be talking with?
correct me if I'm wrong, Gray, but didn't we used to have an AMR shack, as I'll call it, for an ambulance here in Wood Village?
Yeah,
They were
when
looking
I
for a
first
house for-
started, they had a lease just across the street in the old industrial park. They gave that up, I want to say somewhere around 2010. Oftentimes you'll see them in our park or at the school district property if they're kind of in the area. But yeah, they no longer have kind of the little office, I'll call it, in the area. They gave that up some time ago.
Here's some givens that we have. One, prices are going to go up. We we will not be able to negotiate a contract that doesn't have some increases. So I believe that's a realistic picture at this point when this IGA goes away. The second thing is that this is a lot to swallow. This is a big topic. It's an important topic. And we do, again, I'm going to stay with my premise that costs are going to go up.
That much?
No, that's not it. But Well, let me just talk about, we're probably not going to build a fire district with Fairview and Wood Village and go out and buy fire trucks. That's not going to happen. Fire trucks, you know, you name it, $500,000 or more. And then you try to maintain a fire district, you know, it's not reasonable. And most of the studies say that. The outreach, I think, is going to be important for us. I'm just going to go to some steps here that I think we need to do as we think about this. And then I'd like to hear from the council too. I think we need to begin preparing our citizens through conversations and information about what we're dealing with here. And we're dealing with life safety issues here with fire and emergency medical responses, and they need to get a better idea of it too. And we need to think about ways in which we can begin to engage and start to educate people about what we're beginning to deal with here. In terms of looking at this, and Greg's been trying to you know, get me a little bit smarter about this. And I've sat through a number of conversations, and it's going to take some more time to begin to really sift through it. There are 3 proposals laid out here in that report, and 3 different ways. One of the things that, as I meet with mayors, it is, Troutdale is, I don't want to speak for them, but they may go their own direction. So it's it's reasonable because they've indicated that already when they didn't want to continue with the 3 city conversations. Well, let me just stop there and just open it up to comments and that.
Well, I kind of briefly remember that evening, and I think one of the big concerns was if we did join Fire District 10, that there was still some hugely needed improvements needed to either facilities or equipment upgrades.
I think that's either way, in Gresham and doing their facilities analysis, there's a lot of stuff that could be upgraded, replaced. Part of the issue is some of those facilities aren't necessarily in their city because of how the annexation went from Fire District 10 and or where it would be strategic to place if, again, you're looking at a 4-city region, it's not in their city. So, how do you bond that? How do you work the capital, which, could also be an approach. You could have, to say a district, but the district is only for capital purposes. And so your rate only reflects the capital. We're still paying operations out of the general fund. And again, kind of 3 buckets. There's a lot of nuance to those buckets though. But yes, that is correct that I think either way, capital is a discussion that has been put off to the side just to focus right now on kind of the operations and what to do in 2 years, knowing that a 5 and 10 year window is also expensive.
Fire District 10 for some of you right now, they have, I believe, 1 fire department.
So technically, I believe they own 3. 2 of them are leased by Gresham Fire, and then they have like the one that they're housed in.
So there would be a significant capital outlay to get Fire District 10 up to be able to service. I'm not taking it. I mean, I'm not saying that to take it off the table, but there's all these things that fit into. You look at one solution and then you start kind of peeling the onion back here.
Sure.
So
you said in 2020, that's kind of when that Safer Council kind of like took a big pause because of leadership change. And we all kind of saw that a little bit. So with new leadership being on board at least close to 3 years per se, 2 years, has there been any discussion of revisiting that group again? And has there been any discussion of a similar model to Tualatin Fire and Rescue approach?
So again, in my discussions about Gresham Fire, I never want to give an approach that it's not a good service. I just want to make that explicit. And, you know, if we had Chief Lewis here, I'm sure he could explain all the nuances and limitations and regulations that why they operate, how they operate. So I don't want to give an impression that I know they charge this and are like, it is what it is in my perspective. We see some other options and I don't know why or how or when they may be explored. And to go back to where Gresham may be leaning in the appendix in your staff report where I pulled out Gresham's kind of financial kind of summary. They kind of laid out a whole bunch of different options, one of them being a district. And in talking with folks at Gresham, what we get is everything's still on the table. So they're at the moment not committing to one approach or the other. My thought is, you know, if the levy had passed, that gives them 5 years to sort some things out. Because as we said, okay, great, you do a district. That's still a lot of onion to peel. You know, who's going to take over the facilities? What's that agreement look like? What, you know, transferring employees over and whatnot. You know, that buys time. Well, that didn't pass. I don't know what time they feel they have to have those discussions or what they may come back with in terms of asking their community members in terms of a vote and what that would look like. You know, a district, you know, you look at, well, we're paying this much for a fire, relieving cities' general funds. It's also, well, hey, community, we have this pot of money that we're no longer paying for fire. What are your priorities with this? Maybe it's parks, maybe it's recreation, maybe it's different law enforcement. I mean, it's for the communities to decide, you know, what the general fund pot would be if it goes to a district. Maybe a part of it supplementing the district so the tax rate's lower.
And Greg, a district would require a vote from our residents.
Correct.
So,
and that's the other complexity. If you think 4 cities with a district, you know, they all got to vote on it. They all got to approve it.
Well, I can remember when we've had these discussions years ago. And one of the things that came up, and correct me once again, and you may or may not remember this or not, Greg, is that the city of Gresham has this tendency to forget that we were in the concept of capital outlay, that they were including us a part of that, like in the wastewater treatment, for example, right? And then the same thing happened with Fairview with their trunk line on their sewer, and they're saying that we weren't a part of it. And then we found out we were, and we were paying for it, and they tried to double it, you know, at one point years ago. And then something tells me that we were involved with a fire truck and they were trying to say that we needed to pay for a fire truck. And I couldn't remember the outcome of that. And it was for 74, the station 74, and that we needed to make our contribution towards it. And once again, I'm sorry, but I don't remember if we did or not. And then we get into this. So the simple thing is just like tonight, we approved the budget for the MHR, and yeah, you know what I'm talking about, the cable regulatory, right? Where they gave us a complete layout of what was going on. And what it is we're looking into a crystal ball that we can't see. It's really foggy with the city of Gresham and their fire department. And so we're sitting here going, well, do we go with them or do we not? And what it looks like in the budget here that you have down for us is that we're looking at a crystal ball of 4.5% increase over last year's budget.
And that's in the current agreement.
And that's in the current agreement.
Yeah.
And then after that, it could be changing. Yeah, we don't know. So there's that crystal ball that's all foggy.
We got a year.
Yeah.
And short of, we really don't have a year.
Right.
Because it's, if the discussion would be to go to a fire district, just rolling out the whole campaign and elections.
And educating our public.
Yeah, it's probably not realistic, but
as you said, feasible.
Feasible. You know, again, we know we want more voice with Gresham. That's a given because we have no voice right now. If there were going to be increases that we think we could afford and we'd want to put out to our citizens, we got to be at the table with Gresham and being a part. And I kind of a little bit like a fire district is that we get a say we get some kind of influence on how that budget is arrived at each year that Gresham comes up with for the fire district. And again, a lot to chew on here.
I have strong feelings. I'd like to speak when you're done. I will try to not be as sassy, and I probably don't have a ton of solutions. We don't have a ton of solutions, but my capstone was on the Gresham volunteer firefighter legacy, and that was really, Gresham was supported by volunteer firefighters for a very long time, and they discontinued that program. However, like, I can't see why they need this much. Like, that's a crazy increase in cost when most of our calls are medical. And I understand the AMR situation. Maybe they would be less understaffed if they didn't pay people $15 an hour to do a really messed up, difficult job. So I feel like there's a lot of things that need to be addressed. And also I would love to see what needs to be updated with the Fire District 10. I'm sure that the unions of fire departments sometimes for me are just like, yeah, we need, Disneyland in the backyard. And, like, no, you don't. You don't need constant updates. Like, you have to keep them obviously functional within federal guidelines, but I just feel like it's just gone way overboard, and they just don't need to be charging us this much. There are so many other solutions that I just can't see. That being okay. How much was it that takes up of our property taxes?
So right now it's, we
87%?
pay 550,000, which is about half-ish of property taxes. And this is again, that when it said, if that was according to that Gresham report, if they were to charge us this other rate, be a 70% increase, 900,000 a year.
Have something to say about their other rate.
I'm pretty sure they'll be looking to charge as much as possible. I mean, I
Because
think
it's
that,
privatized, yeah.
well, not just that, well, we all know kind of where Gresham is in their financial struggles, and this levy that failed was kind of supposed to give them some aid that now they're having to restructure their budget for this year with the $8 million deficit. So, I mean, this is like we're all saying, this is a huge discussion that I think we need to get ahead of the game, that we don't really have a lot of time to get really ahead of it.
And unfortunately, when back in 2020 with the Safer Council, it felt like we weren't ahead of the game, but we were playing the game with all the different delays and other things going on. It feels like we're behind a bit, even though I think we probably have a better sense of where we may want to go compared to other cities, but we also have to wait for those other cities to kind of sort through their own thing. And it's interesting, Councilor Amon, when you mentioned facilities, that was a big part of the Safer. It was a whole meeting just on facilities. Again, there are some legitimate needs that have, keeping equipment inside safe, some of the medicines need to be climate controlled. When you need a full-on commercial kitchen and individual dorm rooms, I have a hard time with that, understanding there are a lot of places that offer 24/7 coverage that don't have those amenities. And again, I don't want to begin to tell you that, oh, I know fire and I know. Just as an outsider that hasn't ran a fire department or been close to one, that seems a little strange, and it seems a bit much. And I like to go back with, what do we need? And then what are wants that we can, give and provide and things. And that's just on facilities. But in terms of operations, why it takes $32 million a year, I don't know.
The last thing I'd like to say is that there are cities across the nation that are comparable to Gresham, Portland, that are runs only supported by volunteer fire. So it's really hard for me to swallow when people say it just can't be done. It just can't be done without your pockets not filling. I'm sorry, I'll stop, but it's frustrating for me because this doesn't seem like our responsibility to pay this much for the coverage that they give us.
I'll second that motion.
I guess just one last question on my end. If we don't get to an agreement or per se a direction when this IGA sunsets, would Gresham have the authority to bill us for whatever they want at that point, or would they still have to fall within the
One of the questions I actually asked the USC team to look at is, what if we don't? You know, what does that look like? There's a lot of, I think, and Jeff is probably a better one to answer some of that with the different state laws and state mandates and what that could look like, because the team said, well, it was kind of like a yes, you can, and there are probably some downside consequences.
Yeah, we better be able to make responses to our citizens when they have a heart attack.
Well, and that was, I didn't call it out in the presentation. In the report, though, you know, I think we have about four or five hotspot locations that account for, I want to say about a third of all of our calls. And so that's also something to look at, you know, when you're getting kind of frequent flyers or heavy users of the system, what kind of agreements, options, and alternatives can you put in place to deal with that, such as care homes that maybe just be calling for a lift assist? Does it need to be, you know, what's that response?
Yeah, because I do remember having that discussion, and it was more of that medical assistance and not fire response.
That's, I
Right.
mean, that's really the direction. I mean, the other cities are dealing with it. We're not the only city, and it's being dealt with across the nation. This medical calls that you have to somehow separate from fire and pay for it differently than just pile it into a fire budget. And that'll be the challenge, is how we address what we don't think is right. And it's going to be a combination of figuring out what kind of service we want. And then what do we think is a fair price to charge? What do you want? And how much is it going to cost us is where we're going to have to be at some point here in this conversation.
Yeah.
And not tonight.
Because doesn't Gresham also, doesn't Gresham also have like a smaller, like,
Quick response vehicle?
that's what it is.
Yeah, I just was going to point this out, that one of the things that it says in the study is that's the most cost-effective way of responding to medical calls. That's also
Gresham has
what,
one. Sorry.
no, that's also what they cut to balance the budget.
And even when they roll it out, it wasn't a full rollout. And again, I'm not sure if that was because of union negotiations, and like, I don't want to know and understand the details of why. I just know it didn't roll out like it was planned or could have, or that other agents like Tualatin Valley has a series of QRVs that roam around. That's what they do. So again, when you have a fire, stroke, heart attack, trauma, you want someone there as quick as possible. And someone kind of slips and needs help getting up. If they wait another 10 minutes, is it uncomfortable? Yeah. Is the outcome going to change? No.
And I only bring that up because that really speaks to the issue of control and agency is, you know, we don't get to advocate for cost-effective ways of changing service models because we just take whatever is provided.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and that's an effective thing, because I mean, again, if a third of our calls are more just medical, do we really need a big?
Well, it's actually about 80%. When you take out the noise,
Yeah.
about 80%.
Yeah. So, you know, just look at cost effectiveness.
I feel like that's the thing, is like, if your industry or maybe the city isn't willing to evolve with what fire and rescue looks like now, I don't see how that's our problem. Like, I just don't. So yeah, I'll stop you.
But I think they know the need is in medical and the response is a lot quicker.
Right.
So that's probably why that's to their advantage.
What's that? Right.
Thanks. And then I was gonna give you a minute here, Scott. I know. Just. But I do want to move this along because we do have several other items on the agenda.
You know, I over here pointed out that fire trucks are more expensive than police cars, but they're also available. What's not available is firefighters. And so you spin up your own fire department, you can buy all the trucks and build all the buildings you want, but if you can't hire people to deliver service, then you're pretty well hamstrung. And how many years is it going to take you to put them together? And then I would also point out that, you don't have to negotiate with Gresham in concert with the other two cities. You could negotiate fire service all on your own. And it was actually the Wood Village negotiators, then City Manager Bill Peterson and Mayor Tim Clark, that were the primary people that achieved that 4.5% cap. So you got to trust your negotiators, because what that 4.5% cap brought Wood Village was that if it had been an 11-year contract, our price for what would have been the 11th year was less under the new contract than it would have been under the old contract. And it would have taken, and it would take took the new contract 5 years to catch up to what year 11 would have cost us. So, we have that history of being effective negotiators. And I'm just guessing here, but I think you could get further insight into the Gresham issue if you were negotiating on your own and we were only talking about our own needs.
Okay, here's what, and
Thanks.
thank you, Scott. I want to put this out on the table here because we do have several other items on the agenda. We do not have a June meeting, so.
A second June meeting.
Yeah, second June meeting. It's okay. So what I'm going to suggest, and I want to hear feedback, is that this really deserves a work session. And where we have concentrated several hours possibly, and read the report that's in here. And during that time, think about the questions you have. And Greg, if that's works for staff, council can text a question.
Email is great.
Email. Okay. Yeah. Text. I text him. So privileges. I'm a 1-2 finger typer, but anyway. So contact Greg. And then Greg, you begin compiling those questions.
Something we could do, and he's shown a willingness to do it, would probably be remote, but the former chief, Schneider, who was put this SAFER together and has experience actually assembling, separate entities into a district. We could probably have him come as part of the meeting and kind of walk through the part of fire that I don't understand, don't have, and then what are some of those options? Probably even answer some of the questions that come forward and maybe get some insights of, Gresham operations versus district and what that could look like. If that's something I can reach out and see if
I think that'd be very valuable, because that's what we're talking about here, medical response and how to reduce the cost of not having fire trucks rolling. So if we can move on, opportunity to send questions, read the study there. Greg, maybe you and I can start looking at some dates for a work session, and it can't be way far out.
I just make it the second meeting in July and just has it as
Okay.
That's the main part of that meeting.
We
At the
had-
moment, there's nothing on that
Okay, if we
agenda.
can do that, then let's just put it on there, that'll be the work session. You can talk to former Chief Snyder. Would you, since you're not doing anything else, would you begin thinking about an outreach strategy? So we begin doing an outreach. I know Troutdale is starting holding some
Outreach to the other cities or outreach to our community?
No, to our
Outreach.
citizens.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. And we begin thinking about how we're going to communicate this particular challenge to our citizens. And I think that's it. In fact, you comfortable with that? All right. Then we have a plan to get us to another plan.
Governments do that. Got to plan the plan.
Yeah, we do. All right, next item on the agenda then, if we're done with that, city manager evaluation. In your packet, you saw Greg's reflection as we asked him to do. So this is an opportunity for Greg to highlight that. And for council to either follow up on other questions. But at the end of this, Greg has had this is the conclusion of his annual evaluation. And then I will sign off on it. So myself.
Yeah, so in your packet, you know, we took the composite scores, comments, she did the work to put all that together in a comprehensive evaluation. Hopefully, as you read it, like, yeah, that fit the theme or the general consensus of what you talked about. So unless there are questions on that, I'll go into the reflection piece, which you all asked me to put together. You know, it's one page. I spent a lot of time actually more thinking about it than writing it. So please don't think one page is all I think of this. Being city manager now almost 4 years, I went back to the article that we wrote when it was announced I was going to be city manager, and the honor and privilege that it is. And I still believe that. I also believe this is the hardest job ever had. And I think it's because of the heart put into it as the comment was made. And put a lot of pressure on that because this is where people live and where people call home, or where people have their dreams, where their aspirations culminate. And, you know, couldn't be happier with the team that's been assembled. And a lot of the kudos and accolades you provided last time were because of the other people around this table and the work that they do, and the people in the office, in the field day to day, the works that they do. So I certainly don't do it alone. And I certainly try to encourage and foster an organization, community spirit that's for service and for no other reason, just to serve this wonderful community. I don't have an idea for a staff feedback tool yet because, you know, surveys have limitations. There's also a lot of ways to garner staff. How do you feel about just being here? What, you know, are your needs met in technical or, you know, soft and hard skills, et cetera. So one thing I will be working on is putting something together and getting that out within the next, you know, 6 to 9 months, probably. And when that happens, you'll certainly get the results.
Let me just say on that, that's not just a work, you know, make work project.
No,
Whatever you do, make it make sense to you.
it's going to need to be meaningful. If we're going to
Yeah.
put time into doing it, and staff's going to take time either responding to or whatever that looks like, it needs to be for purpose, for value. You know, council relations, you said it's great. I want to make sure it continues to be great. That you said there's a lot of trust there, and that's something I don't take lightly. And so again, just like this evening when we had a person last week say, I'm upset. I'm going to tell the council, well, they're not here. I'm going to pass that along anyway. They wanted you to know. And I just, you know, government transparency is huge. It's the public's business. They should have the right to know what's going on. So we have seasoned counselors, new counselors, a lot of different needs, but hopefully we can meet all the needs and get everyone the information they need. You know, we talked a little bit about it today with our other partners and, you know, interagency coordination, cooperation, partnerships. It's great when things are great. And when you get other departments, other characters, other things going on, it can be very easy to get frustrated and talk ill of them. And I think there's needs to be a good balance of, you know, a positive public face that's still holding everyone accountable to outcomes. And you also need that time behind closed doors or with colleagues to vent a bit so you don't blow up in an inappropriate setting. Because there's certainly a lot of examples of things we may not agree with or why are they going on that way. I'm certainly very guilty of getting frustrated because at our relative size, we can get things done quickly. John pointed something out just this morning that we got a concern about a speed sign that had been covered in stickers, graffiti. Same day that was replaced, and it wasn't even our sign. It was a county jurisdiction sign. That doesn't matter. That's what we do. We make things happen because it's our community. And I think it's easy to forget other organizations have other complexities, other things, you know, involved in that, and they've got their layers and their processes. And sometimes you have to take a step back and realize the individuals are probably doing the best they can within the confines that they have. So again, I like our partners. I'll leave it at that. Community engagement, you know, you put in there that sometimes it feels like, you know, I'm the heartbeat of the city and, you know, that's not something to take lightly, you know, and it's also something I feel should invest in one person. And I hope, and I think it's true that actually, you know, with the organization as a whole, not that I'm looking to go anywhere. As I said last time, I have no other aspirations than to be here. And it's something I said in my council interview. I said, if I have the honor and privilege to serve here as city manager for the rest of my career, that's a career well served. And I still believe that. I also believe, you know, if something were to happen to me, I like to think that the heartbeat is going to continue, and I would do everyone a disservice if I didn't try to do that. But I certainly thank you for the comment, and I love this town. And I'm glad that we're seeing connections being made, bridges being made with community members who may not have felt part of the community or not wanted as part of the community. And again, whether it's business, community members, where, you know, we want them to feel part of the community. It's our collective community. And then professional development. Professional organizations, you know, during COVID, I think stumbled quite a bit and getting challenging, thought-provoking, push the envelope kind of trainings and talk about getting mad and frustrated. So I decided to try to do something about it, join the professional development committee. I was promptly removed from it because I was too radical.
Are you serious?
That though doesn't mean I have all the answers and there's nothing left for me to learn. I also think there are areas that I can focus on that aren't necessarily municipal related per se. Staff will know sometimes my confidence isn't great. You know, I know you have to lean into conflict. I still don't like to. So there are some areas I'm going to work on of what are some good trainings to just, again, build that sense of confidence, instill confidence in the team, and do the work that needs to get done. It may not be directly municipal related per se of, you know, going to the Oregon City Managers Conference and hearing what Hillsborough did again. I think it's going to be more of personal skill building for this next round to continue to be an effective leader. So that was a summary of it. You know, you certainly have the whole text there and I'm happy to answer questions, comments you may have or different direction you'd like me.
I just have just a quick comment on that last piece of professional development. I think a huge portion that I think is important to consider, especially in the position that you hold with so many responsibilities and overseeing, you know, a team and your heart invested in this community, is that you ensure that you have a way to do self-care for yourself.
I had a hunch you're going to bring that.
Because again, you know, if you're not well, it's difficult to take care of others or to look out for the well-being of others. So I think it is important that you do invest in your self-care, whatever that looks like for you. That you know, for me, it'd be a priority. You know, because again, we can't do our jobs if we're not taking care of ourselves as well. So that's just kind of one comment on that professional development.
And, you know, I agree 100%. And I also will tell you, I'll just be fully honest. That's one of those where I say, do as I say, not as I do, because I'm a poor role model for that.
I'm writing that down for next year.
Since it's 100% true. And it's also true that I could say, do as I say, not as I do. People will do as I do because that's setting the example and probably should do a little better, taking some time away and see.
Yeah. You're too hard on yourself. Yeah.
How much? Greg, thank you for that reflection. It certainly matches up, I believe, with what we had talked about. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. And thank you for allowing me
And
to.
I'm just happy to
continue to
that
be here.
evaluation. Put a little smiley face.
And then emoji.
Except I don't do that.
One last thing. You do control my compensation. And if there is one step left in my pay scale, if you feel I've earned that last step, you're free to give it. If you're like, no, you're good, then that's fine too.
So is that part of tonight's?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you got one more step?
One more step.
I would make a motion that.
I had the numbers people verify because last year I goofed it. So
That's why I looked
it's
right over.
it's one more
step
step.
away.
Well, let's deal with that. The step, do you wanna, what is the step increase?
The step increase is 5%. That would put him at the top of what we've historically used is the city manager's pay scale, because technically you can pay him as much or as little as you want.
That 5% sounds consistent with what staff has been, what were the last raises there?
Yeah, it's just, it would be the same as what we give everyone else.
In percentage.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right, is there a motion?
Make a motion to give this man a raise.
A second.
Wow.
Did I hear a second?
I
All
second.
right, we got a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Way to go.
Well, thank you all very much.
But you have to do more.
You're putting that down exactly as you wrote it.
We are.
We should have put.
Yo,
Are you gonna say?
You have to do hot, you know.
Okay, good, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And be radical.
Fix that, Becky.
Okay, we got one more item on the agenda and,
Fix that.
and I know, we're over that, time limit, but we did have, a lengthy report. So, Seth,
Yes.
what do you got?
You have your finance director's report. Normally this would go to the second meeting of the month. But since we're not having a second meeting, we included it here mostly for informational purposes. I don't have any highlights other than to say this is the week that our auditors are here for their first visit, poking around. So they've been doing a good job of that so far.
You know, Seth, the only one thing that I did, because this is, we were doing the fire update and then just what we went through. And I went through the bottom line here of our increases over the last 3 years. And if I got it right, the only reason I'm saying this is keep that number in mind that Gresham has put out there. Theoretically, I mean, that range,
Burned.
but and I may have, may not have this exactly right. But in 2021, the increase in our revenue from property taxes to the next year was $66,250. That was our increase in revenue for everything we're doing. And the year from the next year was 22 to 23, our revenue increase from property taxes was 228,000 and change.
And I'll just point out that that report consolidates both urban renewal and city. So the big jump you saw in property tax was the byway coming on, and that's all urban renewal and not available for general purpose.
And the only reason I'm calling that out tonight is that we just have looked at an IGA and fire and emergency response that we've seen numbers. So keep that in mind, that it isn't like we're going to get a whole bunch of more money through tax, property tax.
No, and I would point out, since it's pertinent to the fire discussion, the last major revenue discussion that we had was centered around our franchise fees and user utility license fees, that we were below what Gresham was charging PGE, Northwest Natural, and we also don't charge our own utilities. And so we can recirculate that, but that was a big chunk, but it really would have got us maybe $250,000 to $300,000 if we'd maxed that out. So that was presented as an option for future consideration, but what the impacts of Gresham asking would exceed that. And that was kind of our big chunk, that if we had to raise more money was the path of least resistance.
Okay, thank you. City Attorney, any
I have
comments on what you heard here tonight that
having been involved in creation of districts, if you want more detail on that, there's a lengthy statutory process, and then you have to go ask the voters for the. So if you started now, you probably wouldn't be done by 2020. So you would have to think about, now that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. But it may mean a short-term extension of the Gresham IGA for lots of money.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any council reports or comments or?
I just want to mention, unfortunately, I will not be here on Thursday. We had to move our vacation from the end of the month to this Thursday. So I won't be here for the appreciation dinner.
You'll be
And-
missed.
I'll get your food.
Who's getting your drink tickets?
Yeah. All right, we got, so we got the volunteer appreciation, June 15th, 6 o'clock, city night out, July 21st. And you have received, I believe, from Port of Portland, Chris Damgan is representing, he's left Troutdale and he's now working with the Port of Portland. And he sent out a note about a meeting because Port of Portland is really hired him now as an outreach agent for the port to each county. And that's a good thing in a lot of different ways. So he is hosting a meeting and wanted to invite us and I may be able to be there. I had another appointment, but I'm going to try to be there. But it's a good thing in a lot of ways that Port of Portland is starting to, think about their role a little differently than it's always been to run an airport. Okay, again, thanks for hanging in there.
I've got two quick ones. Again, dinner on Thursday, so we'll be set up for drinks and things at 6, and then dinner will be at 6:30. And we have beer and wine. Wine is red or white. That's my knowledge of it. We did connect with the Grand Ron last week, and we're hoping to hold a 2 council in September. So I'll send an email out later this week looking for some dates and things so we can get that on the calendar. And the last one is we need counselor quotes from all of you for our big poster board at the night out. And I was told that if you don't send one, we will create one for you. And we already came up with some good ones.
Like what? What, Jeff? What are we going to say on your pamphlet?
The odds are good, but the goods might be odd.
It was the odds are good, but the goods might be odd. Zingers like that. I mean, nothing terribly inappropriate or whatnot, but just encourage you to send, a 1-sentence kind of what it's like to be, a counselor, why you're a counselor, like,
A little pressure on you. I did send one. So, and it's a 1 sentence.
Was it so good?
Oh, it's full of wisdom. Just read it. You'll be moved.
I'm sure too.
Yes. Okay, but yeah, try to get that to,
I think Caroline sent out an email. So if you need that resent, I'll have her send it tomorrow, just as a helpful reminder.
The September joint council with the Grand One, would that be here or over there?
It's our turn to host.
Oh.
yeah, it's always, and that's always a very,
Thursday.
very,
This Thursday here,
At
6
what time?
o'clock.
6 o'clock.
Yeah, we'll actually have everything out back in the back lawn.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Ooh,
outdoor affair.
Okay.
Counselor Tan, you look
With
like you're writing down things fast. Are you
Oh, yeah, just taking notes.
losing
I
track?
need to, I have my homework. What?
Okay, all right, yes, I'm gonna adjourn the meeting.